Dance of the Dead by Corrosion and Conformity. So by the time I've transcribed the song and built up the chops to be able to play it, usually some of the main themes that I'm going through will percolate to the surface. And the two that have percolated to the surface on this one is, interestingly enough, intonation and embracing the process. So obviously you didn't click on this tab to learn about intonation, but I'm going to tell you about it anyways. So I'm working on this song, and once I start getting into some power chords on the A string, maybe around the 6th, 8th fret, it sounds off. And I start questioning my tuning. And yeah, my tuning was off, but after I got in the right tuning, it was still off. So then I tuned to the power chord, but then the rest of the song was off. And lo and behold, it was intonation. So I share this with you because I've had a guitar for decades. I've been in the metal for a long time, and I've never dealt with my intonation. Maybe my ear wasn't experienced enough. Maybe I was lucky enough where my guitars didn't go out. But I'm going to plant the seed with you. If you're working on a song, or actually if you're playing a song in your power chord and you don't hear the waver on maybe like the 1st, 3rd fret, you start kind of hearing a bit of an out of tune waver when you're on the 12th fret, it's probably intonation. And so lo and behold, YouTube's got some nice little tutorials on there, and it was pretty simple. So if you start noticing that, don't be afraid to give it a shot. It wasn't that tough changing the intonation on my guitar. Now, I will also tell you one thing, is that it was necessary for me to go through my bridge and clean all the gunk off the screws. Otherwise, I would have stripped them off. So if you've got an old gunky bridge like mine was, clean it up. That way you won't strip some stuff out. Okay, now to the embracing the process theme that percolated up to me when I was on this song. If you happen to be like me, where you're not an exceptionally fast learner, and actually more probably to the slower learning aspect of the process, you know, there's been plenty of times where I've thought, you know what, I want to get on my guitar and I want to just jam out and enjoy myself, and I need to find a new song to do that. And I go look, and I go, okay, I don't want to play these songs, you know, because everyone's played them, and then these songs I've already played, so I got to go find something that I think I can do, you know, maybe not too riffy like an Alex Skolnick, blah, blah, blah. And then so you spend a couple hours just trying to find a song where you're hoping that you could spend a whole 15-20 minutes learning it and then jam out on it for the rest of the night and enjoy yourself and feel gratified. And most of the times that doesn't happen. You know, most of the time, even the simpler songs have got stuff that's challenging in them that you didn't know until you got into them. And so with this idea of embracing the process, I think there's something that predicates it. And one of the things that predicates it is having some successes where you know what, that if you go through the hard work, that you'll be able to nail the song. So get a couple successes under your belt, and then know that, yes, it may be time consuming, but if you stick with it, you can be confident that you're going to get to the end and you're going to be able to play the song pretty darn well. And in so doing, also realizing that you will spend more time in the learning process of the song than you probably ever will in the playing of that song after you've learned it. Unless you're playing covers and you've got a band where you're doing that on a frequent basis, or if it's in rotation with your jam session with your friends, you know, the bulk of your time will be put into the learning of the song more so than actually playing it once you've got it down. And with that realization, enjoy the process. You know, enjoy the riff. Enjoy figuring it out. Enjoy building up to it actually sounding decent. Because if you're a slow learner like me, you're not going to spend nearly as much time after you've learned it jamming it and enjoying it as you were spending learning it. And so, since I've got a captive audience at the moment, I'm also going to add in another concept that I had been thinking about and has also influenced my playing and the challenges with finding enjoyment in playing. There was many times over the years where I'd want to play something and maybe the tabs weren't that good, and they were just kind of a general overview of how the song was, and it was, for me, it was like I wanted to do it note for note. And for me, note for note was always, it was the way the song should be played, and it's the way the song should sound. And I was listening to a recent interview with John Five, and he was with a session drummer, maybe Aldridge or something along that name. And John Five came out and he was basically talking about like eruption and things of that nature. And he goes, these songs essentially need to be played note for note. Don't go and just do them marginally. Hit them note for note, and kind of like they're worthy of it, and they're not parts that should be generalized in your playing, but they're parts that are iconic and need to be played exactly how you heard them when you fell in love with them. And I think he went on and said a couple things more and kind of solidified what I had been thinking. I was like, oh, dude, you nailed it. Also, on a side, I'd like to point at him for a second. In my opinion, John Five may be one of the best metal guitarists there are. I'm not saying he's my favorite, but he's one of the best. And if you go and watch what his solo that he did on that metal show, I don't know if he's had multiple appearances or not, he stands apart. All right, now to discussing the tabs. So the first riff, which is like 2 seconds long, a couple power chords and a trill. The trill took me a while. That's not something I usually play. And so if you've got the same issue as me, know that by the time you learn the whole song, you'll be able to do the trill. But I wasn't able to do it at first. At 8 seconds and 10 seconds, you see some patterns of alternate picking. I'm going to talk about these alternate picking patterns in the entirety for the song. They are kind of unique in their approach, and I say that in that most, let's just say 80s, 90s metal kind of had this triplet approach where you would have patterns of 3, patterns of 6, and it, at least in my case, it was like kind of an explosive pattern muscle memory in my hand that always allowed me to do those. And I knew going into this song that I was going to have to build some new muscle memory and coordination for their patterns, and expect that. They're not necessarily going to be patterns of 3 or 6. As you'll see on this one, there's one pattern of a set of 5 notes. These guys are not afraid of upstrokes. And so I guess what I'm saying on that one is, your standard blast of 3 or 6 pattern of alternate picking isn't going to cut it on this song. And when you see me playing it, I didn't have it down to begin with. It was something that I had to develop in the process. So I've skipped to tab sheet 2, and the riff that's standing out to me is, geez, I've had a brain fart. What riff was standing out to me on this one? Here it is. It's the one at 33 seconds to 43 seconds. And there's a, on the E, A, D, G, B, on the B string, if you're standard A440 tuning, there's a slide from the 6 to the 9 with a vibrato and a slide off. So I'm just going to share that was tough for me. I personally don't like skipping strings. I also don't like playing on the skinny strings, but you got to do what you got to do. And if you've focused on rhythms and you have the same challenges that I do, because I had always just focused on rhythms and never ended up doing these single notes down there, skipping strings, and I guess my word of encouragement to you will be, you know what, you'll get used to it. I got used to it. Tab sheet 3. I'm looking at these riffs, and I had a lot of challenges with them, but I think the challenges were really just transcribing them, figuring the notes out. And, that's already done, so a lot of that doesn't need to be discussed. But I will say, if you take a look at the riff at 1 minute 12 seconds to 1 minute and 18 seconds, the final back end of that riff has kind of the unique picking pattern where they didn't do a pattern of 3 or 6. They did a downstroke, then they did a pattern of 5, and then they hit the 12 and slid, or did a slide from there. And I had to spend a lot of time listening to it slow and going over and over and making sure I got it right. So I encourage you, don't just do some random picking pattern that fits the timing of that signature. Do the pattern that they're actually playing. Play it slow enough, work on it, and getting back to embrace the process. Looking through the tab sheets, the one that starts to grab my attention next is at tab sheet 6. And this is the solo. And what do I want to say about the solo? I think the solo is ideal for someone that's never soloed. If you've never soloed before, pretty much me, do this solo. Work on it. And if you're like me, you're going to find that your fingers are feeling clunky. They're wanting to go other places. But it's very obtainable. The last riff on this sheet is 2 minutes 56 to 3 minutes and 7 seconds. This picking pattern took a heck of a lot of work. And it's really not surprising because a lot of other songs on this album really had some uniqueness to their picking patterns, and this is one of them. And spend the time on it and try to get it note for note. And I'm over here looking at it going, did I transcribe it right? I'm looking at these sets of I'm starting off with patterns of 2, and I'm wondering, did I play with a pattern of 1 to begin with, and then patterns of 2? Sometimes even when you transcribe the stuff and you think you're looking at it when you're playing it, sometimes your mind just takes over and you start getting lockstep with the song itself, even though you might be looking at something different. So that's kind of my meandering way of saying, listen to it, play it slow, and don't just hit some random notes just because you can kind of fill in the time correctly. Get to the pattern, and when you get in the pattern, it's much more rewarding and fulfilling when you do.
Bye.